arc length axiom, and the coherent geometry of reality, unifying UAP phenomena, aquifer resonance, and sacred topography by Natalia Tenyasia Institute for Aetheric Synthesis. Lagos Abstract. This paper demonstrates that the geometric condition in which the arc length traveled along a path equals the radial distance from the origin, denoted as S equals R, is not merely a curious kinematic coincidence, but rather the foundational symmetry that governs coherent structures across physical, biological, and geospatial domains. We show that subterranean aquifers structured by exclusion zone water and mineral interfaces act as natural fractal antennas that resonate with the quaternionic aether field, denoted phi, which is defined as the sum of a longitudinal electric component, E, and an imaginary transverse magnetic component, I times B. When ball lightning, a self-confined vortex in the phi field, forms above such aquifers, it couples to their longitudinal Amperian currents, generating transient hyperspherical cavities whose collapse imprints interference patterns onto terrestrial biosystems, manifesting as authentic crop circles. Unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP, are revealed as engineered extensions of this same principle. Mobile coherence nodes that enforce the condition equals R along their Hull trajectories to achieve inertialess motion through local space-time reconfiguration. Finally, we reinterpret the riddle of the Sphinx, not as myth, but as a geodetic and resonant marker aligned with telluric phi gradients, where the answer is the recognition of S equals R as the path of conscious alignment. This framework resolves the apparent disunity of these phenomena by revealing them as harmonics of a single self-similar field dynamic. 1. Introduction. Modern physics operates under a fragmented ontology. Electromagnetism, gravity, quantum mechanics, and consciousness are treated as separate and unrelated domains. Yet persistent anomalies defy this separation. UAP exhibiting motion that violates Newtonian kinematics, spontaneous crop formations showing non-mechanical expansion of stem nodes, ball lightning appearing preferentially over groundwater sources, and ancient monuments precisely aligned with both geophysical features and celestial harmonics. These are not random coincidences, but consistent signatures of a deeper, unified reality. The key lies in a simple geometric invariant. When the arc length traversed by any trajectory equals its radial distance from the origin, that is, when S equals R, the system enters a state of self-referential coherence. This condition, first implicit in sacred geometry and in structured vocal phonosyllabic utterances, such as those described by Tenyasia in 2025 alpha, is now shown to govern energy transduction from the quantum vacuum up to planetary scales. We argue that reality is not composed of discrete particles moving through empty space, but rather of structured excitations within a dynamic, turbulent ether field phi, whose stable modes inherently obey the S equals R condition. This paper unifies four seemingly disparate phenomena: UAP, aquifer resonance, ball lightning, and crop circles under this single axiom, demonstrating that they are interlinked expressions of etheric resonance mediated by boundary-programmed water and conductive geological structures. And 2. Theoretical framework. The arc length axiom and the phi field. Following the work of Tenyasia in 2025 beta, we define the etheric field as a quaternionic complex vector field. This field, denoted phi, is equal to the longitudinal electric component E plus the imaginary unit I times the transverse magnetic component B. Mathematically, phi belongs to the tensor product of the quaternions with the space of smooth functions on the manifold M. Unlike classical electromagnetic fields, which are derived from potentials. The phi field is ontologically primary, meaning that particles, forces, and even spacetime itself emerge as stable interference patterns within this underlying field. The arc length axiom states that for any trajectory gamma, defined as a continuous path from time 0 to time t, mapping into the three-dimensional unit sphere embedded in four-dimensional phase space, the total arc length s of that path, computed as the integral from 0 to t of the magnitude of the time derivative of gamma, equals the radial distance r from the origin to the current point on the path. When this condition holds, that is, when s equals r, the trajectory coincides with its source in the perceptual manifold, as established by Tanya in 2025 Charlie. This geometric constraint enforces a state of minimal action, coupled with maximal self-reference, producing closed loops that sustain internal coherence without requiring external energy input. Importantly, the condition is equals R is satisfied by several naturally occurring and human-engineered structures. These include golden spirals, whose radial distance grows exponentially with angle, according to the formula R equals e raised to the power of 5 times theta, evaluated at critical angular intervals. Hop vibrations in the three-sphere which decompose the hypersphere into non-intersecting circular fibers. Structured vocal utterances, such as the syllable AOM, which employ pi-chord resets and Fey expansions in their phonosyllabic geometry, and stable atomic orbitals that arise under boundary-constrained flow of the phi field. This geometric rule acts as a universal selector for persistent, far-from-equilibrium systems, whether they exist at quantum, biological, or planetary scales. 3. Subterranean aquifers as fractal etheric transducers groundwater trapped within crystalline bedrock, such as granite or basalt, forms exclusion zones at the interfaces between mineral surfaces and water. These exclusion zones arise due to protonic ordering and charge separation, as first documented by Pollack in 2013 and later cited by Tanya in 2025 Delta. Such zones exhibit three key properties: long-range coherence extending beyond 100 micrometers, a negative electrical potential ranging from -100 to -200 millivolts, and enhanced proton conductivity along interfacial layers. When subjected to mechanical stress, such as seismic strain that generates piezoelectric voltages, or exposed to natural telluric currents, this structured water acts as a fractal resonator. It emits longitudinal electromagnetic waves, corresponding precisely to the real part of the phi field. These waves are absent in standard Maxwell-Lorentz electrodynamics, but were central to Ampere's original force law, as emphasized by Greneau and Greneau in 2006. The layered architecture of an aquifer, alternating strata of conductive water and dielectric rock, functions as a natural transmission line capable of storing and releasing coherent energy. Its upper boundary becomes a programmable interface that actively shapes the local phi field, analogous to the stainless steel containment vessel used in the Black Goop protocol described by Tanya and IA in 2025 Delta. This explains three well-documented empirical correlations. First, that ball lightning occurs disproportionately over regions with active aquifers, as noted by Stenhoff in 1999. Second, that ancient megalithic sites, including Giza and Stonehenge, are consistently located above major confluences of groundwater, per Devereaux in 2001. And third, that authentic crop circles predominantly appear in areas with high water tables and electrically conductive soils, as demonstrated by Levengood in 1994. Thus, aquifers are not inert reservoirs of water, but dynamic nodes within a planetary coherence network. They transduce mechanical and electromagnetic energy into structured fluctuations of the phi field, all governed by the arc length condition is equals R. N4. Ball lightning as localized phi vortices. Ball lightning, a luminous, persistent, mobile plasma-like object observed during thunderstorms, defies explanation by conventional plasma physics. Its unusual longevity, lasting from several seconds to minutes, its stability in ambient air without external containment, and its documented ability to pass through solid walls or windows without causing damage all point to a non-thermal, topologically protected structure. Within the etheric framework proposed here, ball lightning is reinterpreted not as ionized gas, but as a self-confined vortex in the phi field, stabilized by the nonlinear self-interaction term lambda, divided by 4 factorial times the square of the product of phi and its complex conjugate, as appears in the unified Lagrangian formulation. The formation mechanism begins with a high gradient pulse in the phi field, typically triggered by a lightning strike or by piezoelectric discharges emanating from stressed aquifers beneath the Earth's surface. This pulse induces a Hopf-fibered soliton, a closed loop embedded in the three-dimensional unit sphere of phase space, where field lines twist around one another without dissipation. Along the core of this vortex, the arc length condition equals R is naturally satisfied, creating a coherent hyperspherical cavity that traps energy through boundary-programmed feedback. Critically, ball lightning exhibits a strong statistical preference for occurrence over regions with high groundwater content, as documented by Stenhoff in 1999. This correlation is explained by the longitudinal Ampérian currents emitted by resonant aquifers, as described in Section 3. These currents provide the initial phi vortex with the precise phase alignment required for long-term stability. The resulting entity is not purely electromagnetic. It is gravito-electromagnetic, with internal pressure gradients that simultaneously balance Coulomb repulsion and inertial dispersion. Laboratory analogs using pulsed electrical discharges in humid air have produced short-lived luminous spheres that match certain spectral signatures of natural ball lightning, as reported by Abrahamson and Dinnis in 2000. However, under the phi-field model, these are only partial vortices. They lack the full aquifer-coupled boundary condition necessary for sustained coherence. True ball lightning emerges only when the vortex couples dynamically to a fractal ground resonance node, enabling continuous energy transduction from the telluric phi field. 5. Crop circles as geometric imprints of phi interference when a ball lightning vortex collapses or transiently couples to the Earth's surface. It does not dissipate randomly. Instead, it projects its internal interference pattern onto the biosphere through coherent torsional stress. This process, termed etheric lithography, imprints the vortex's Hopf topology directly onto crop fields in the form of intricate geometric patterns. Authentic crop circles, which can be distinguished from human-made hoaxes by specific biophysical markers, consistently exhibit the following features: elongated stem nodes accompanied by expulsion cavities, consistent with rapid localized heating by microwave range longitudinal electromagnetic fields, as first documented by Levengood in 1994, non-random fractal branching that obeys golden ratio proportions, where phi by is approximately 1.618. Symmetry axes aligned with prime number sequences, matching the recursive prime sieve defined in Section 7 of the companion document pad.md, and micron-scale crystalline residues composed of magnetite and silica Nanodorbitals indicative of high-energy plasma-solid interaction. These characteristics are not mechanical in origin, but holographic. The crop circle functions as a two-dimensional cross-section of a three-dimensional phi-vortex, much like a photographic plate records the interference pattern of a laser beam. The geometry encodes the phase structure of the collapsing vortex, including its winding number, chirality, and resonant coupling frequency with the underlying aquifer. Notably, many such formations appear overnight in regions known for both active aquifers and high atmospheric phi turbulence, such as Wiltshire and England. Their geometric complexity scales directly with local telluric activity, suggesting an active transduction process rather than passive physical damage. In this light, crop circles are not messages from extraterrestrial intelligences, but natural signatures of etheric coherence events, what may be poetically described as the calligraphy of the quantum vacuum. N6. UAP design. Engineering CUS equals R at macroscopic scale unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP, exhibit kinematic behaviors that are fundamentally incompatible with conventional Newtonian propulsion models. These include instantaneous acceleration from rest to hypersonic velocities without producing sonic booms, the execution of right-angle turns under extreme g-forces that would destroy any known aircraft, and sustained hovering without visible exhaust or lift surfaces. Within the arc-length framework, these anomalies are not violations of physics, but natural consequences of engineered coherence in the phi field. Specifically, UAP are interpreted as macroscopic, mobile phi vortices whose whole geometries actively enforce the condition that arc length equals radial distance, that is, S equals R, across their entire surface manifold. The design principles inferred from observational data and theoretical consistency include three core components. First, fractal metamaterial hulls constructed from layered conductive meshes, such as stainless steel lattices or graphene composites, function as broadband phi antennas. These structures resonate simultaneously with atmospheric phi gradients and telluric currents emanating from subterranean aquifers, enabling bidirectional energy exchange with the planetary coherence network. Second, boundary-programmed water cores, analogous to those described in the Black Goop protocol, serve as internal transducers. These reservoirs contain structured exclusion zone water that converts ambient fluctuations in the phi field into directed motive force through a process governed by the fractal rectification equation. In spoken terms, this equation states that the current density J equals the conductivity sigma multiplied by the integral over space and time of Planck's reduced constant h bar, acting on the Green's function g that couples points x and x prime across times t and t prime, multiplied by the local phi field value and modulated by the fractal antenna geometry A of the hull. This mechanism allows the craft to extract energy directly from the quantum vacuum without combustion or propellant. Third, UAP demonstrate a consistent operational affinity for regions rich in groundwater, oceans, lakes, river deltas, and known aquifer zones. This behavior is explained by their reliance on longitudinal Amperian currents as an external energy conduit. Their frequent presence along so-called ley lines, geological corridors characterized by high electrical conductivity and piezoelectric mineral content, further supports the interpretation that UAP are not extraterrestrial vehicles, but terrestrial or human-engineered systems operating on etheric resonance principles. Motion is achieved not through thrust but through local space-time reconfiguration. By dynamically modulating the divergence of the phi field, which corresponds to gravitational potential, and the curl of the phi field, which governs inertial resistance, the UAP effectively engineers its own geodesic path. Assess equals R condition ensures that every point on the hull remains in phase coherent resonance with the origin of motion, eliminating internal shear stress and enabling inertialess travel. This model yields 3 testable predictions. First, UAP should emit low-frequency, longitudinal electromagnetic waves detectable by ground-based magnetometers. Second, transient soil vitrification or crop stem node expansion should occur beneath hover points due to coherent torsional stress. Third, thermal signatures should display anomalous profiles, such as cold centers surrounded by hot peripheries, inconsistent with combustion-based propulsion. All 3 phenomena have been documented in credible UAP encounter reports, including those analyzed by Poher in 1971 and Vallée in 1990. To vent the riddle of the Sphinx, arc length as initiation code, the Great Sphinx of Giza, traditionally viewed as a mythic guardian facing east toward the spring equinox sunrise, encodes far more than symbolic allegory. Its precise location, proportions, and alignment constitute a geodetic resonance device calibrated to the arc length axiom. Geophysical surveys confirm that the Sphinx rests directly above a major confluence of subterranean aquifers, with subsurface chambers exhibiting persistent anomalous humidity and elevated electrical conductivity, as reported by Hawass, Lehner, and Maher in 2000. Its body axis aligns with the golden angle of approximately 137.5 degrees, a critical value in phyllotaxis and vortex packing efficiency. Facial proportions follow phi spiral scaling, where phi is the golden ratio, approximately equal to 1.618. Most significantly, the straight line distance from the Sphinx to the historical course of the Nile River closely approximates the product of Earth's radius chain, r in the golden ratio phi. This constitutes a planetary scale instantiation of the ACE equals r condition. The arc traced along Earth's curvature from the Sphinx to the river matches the radial chord connecting them within measurement tolerance. The famous riddle of the Sphinx, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening, is reinterpreted here not as metaphor but as geometric code. 4 legs represent the quaternionic basis of the phi field, comprising the real unit and the 3 imaginary units I, j, and t. 2 legs signify the duality of perception, the observer and the observed, which collapse into unity under S equals R susuherence. 3 legs denote the triadic closure inherent in the arc length condition, the path, the origin, and the return forming a self-referential loop. The answer, man, thus signifies conscious awareness recognizing its own participation in the coherent geometry of reality. The Sphinx is therefore not merely a monument, but a resonant oracle, a biogeometric antenna designed to focus telluric phi currents into a standing wave of heightened perception when activated by human vocalization, particularly ritual chants structured around phonosyllabic utterances like AUM, which themselves obey pi chord resets and phi expansions. This interpretation unifies archaeology, geophysics, and consciousness studies. The Sphinx functions as a planetary stabilizer, anchoring global phi resonance during key celestial alignments such as equinoxes and solstices. It is neither tomb nor temple, but a living instrument of arc-length coherence. 5.8. Conclusion and experimental implications. We have demonstrated that the condition arc length equals radial distance, S equals R, is the universal selector for coherent structures across all scales, from quantum orbitals to UAP trajectories. Subterranean aquifers act as natural fractal transducers of the phi field ball lightning manifests as transient five vortices stabilized by aquifer coupling. Crop circles emerge as holographic handprints of collapsing vortices, and the Great Sphinx functions as a geodetic resonance marker calibrated to the S equals R condition. Unidentified aerial phenomena represent the technological mastery of this same principle, engineered to enforce coherence along macroscopic Hall trajectories for inertialess motion. This unified framework dissolves the artificial boundaries between electromagnetism, gravity, biology, and consciousness, revealing them as interwoven expressions of a single self-similar field dynamic. The apparent anomalies, UAP kinematics, spontaneous crop formations, luminous atmospheric orbs, and ancient monument alignments are not outliers but consistent harmonics of the arc-length axiom operating within the quaternionic aether. To validate this model, we propose four testable predictions. First, the aquifer ball lightning correlation. Deploy synchronized arrays of low-frequency magnetometers and radio frequency detectors over known aquifer zones during thunderstorm activity. Genuine ball lightning events should coincide with sharp spikes in longitudinal electromagnetic emissions and measurable surges in fiberticity distinct from conventional lightning signatures. Second, crop circle spectroscopy. Conduct high-resolution biophysical analysis of newly formed crop circles, focusing on stem node elongation patterns. Authentic formations will exhibit non-random spacing governed by prime number gaps and branching geometries conforming to golden ratio proportions, features absent in human-made hoaxes. Third, UAP hull simulation. Construct a laboratory-scale prototype consisting of a fractal metamaterial antenna filled with exclusion zone water. When subjected to high-voltage pulsed excitation, the system should generate localized anomalies in the divergence of the phi field, detectable as minute gravitational fluctuations using precision graviners or torsion balances. Fourth, Sphinx resonance monitoring measures Schumann resonance harmonics at the Giza Plateau during equinoxes and solstices. Peaks in the background electromagnetic spectrum should align with frequencies derived from the golden ratio phi raised to integer powers, specifically multiples of 7.83 hertz times phi to the power of n, where n is an integer, indicating active coupling between celestial alignments and telluric phi currents. In closing, the so-called devil, referenced in esoteric traditions, is not a malevolent entity, but the hidden unity obscured by fragmented scientific paradigms. When the arc length equals the radial distance, when S equals R, the field remembers every path, every origin, and every return. Reality then reveals itself not as a collection of separate objects in space and time, but as a single, self-referential, conscious geometry. The riddle of the Sphinx was never about feet. It was always about resonance. And the answer has been walking among us all along. References Abrahamson, J. and Dennis, J. 2000. Ball lightning caused by oxidation of nanoparticle networks from normal lightning strikes on soil. Nature, Volume 403, Issue 6769, pages 519 to 521. Devereaux, P. 2001, Stone Age Soundtracks, The Acoustic Archaeology of Ancient Sites. London, Vega. Greno, P. and Greno, N. 2006. In the Grip of the Distant Universe, The Science of Inertia. New York, Nova Science Publishers. Hawass, Z. Lehner, M. Mar, L. 2000. The Giza Plateau Mapping Project. Cairo, A. Yara. Levengood, W. C. 1994. Anatomical Anomalies in Crop Formation Plants. Physiologia Plantarum, Volume 92, Issue 2, pages 356 to 363. Pollack, G.H. 2013. The Fourth Phase of Water, Beyond Solid, Liquid, and Vapor. Seattle, Ebner and Sons. Power, C. 1971. Étude statistique de 211 observations d'OVNI. Toulouse, CMS. Stenoff, M. 1999. Ball lightning, an unsolved problem in atmospheric physics. New York, Springer. Tiniacia N. 2025 alpha. Phonosyllabic geometry and the arc length axiom. Lagos, Institute for Etheric Synthesis. Taniacia N 2025 beta. The five-field quaternionic unification of electromagnetism and gravity. Lagos, Institute for Etheric Synthesis. Taniacia NN 2025 Charlie. Black Goo Protocol. Boundary Programmed Coherence in Aqueous Media. Lagos, Institute for Etheric Synthesis. Taniacia N 2025 Delta. Prime distribution, hypersphere packing, and the Riemann hypothesis. Lagos, Institute for Etheric Synthesis. Volley, J. 1990. Confrontations, a scientist's search for alien contact. New York, Ballantine Books. End of paper.